Hello and welcome to Access Asia. I'm Delon D'Souza. Coming up, India says it won't sign any trade deal in a hurry, but reports indicate New Delhi and Washington are inching towards an agreement as Indian exporters get squeezed by US tariffs in place. Japan gets its first female prime minister, hardline conservative Sanae Takaichi, expected to lurch the country further to the right on matters such as immigration and defense. And sumo wrestlers win the hearts of Londoners in a historic 5-day tournament in the British capital. This as they return to the city for the second time in their centuries-long history. The United States and India are inching towards a trade deal. Nothing is finalized yet, but reports indicate tariffs could be slashed to 15% from the current 50%. India is among the most tariff countries in the world, currently facing a 25% tariff from Washington for trade and a further 25% for its purchases of Russian crude. The latter, too, may be set to change. To talk more about this, we can bring in Olivier Blarel, researcher on South Asia, who was formerly with the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. Thank you so much for joining us on the program. New Delhi had been driving a tough bargain with Washington, but now we have reports that these two sides could soon have a trade deal on their hands. Has New Delhi been backed into a corner?
Well, since they both are not operating in a vacuum, I think it's not surprising that yes, India is in a tough spot because of its growing deficit with many countries, and of course being squeezed on the tariffs with the U.S., which is its first trade partner.
Washington has levers it pulls to influence to get outcomes it wants. We saw that with H-1B visas. Is that what is happening here? Is that why we see this reaction from India?
Well, yes, of course. I mean, the comprehensive partnership, which has been built up for the past 3 decades, has never seen, I think, such a tumultuous times. And I think that trade is a bit on itself. Is not in the full compact anymore. So that puts what was seen as a American sort of gift to its partners, whether it be Japan, Europe, or India, is not the case anymore. So now India has to manage that in a time where its trade deficit is booming with China. So it's pretty much pushed in a corner right now, and I think Washington knows it, and I think that's why they're trying to take advantage of that.
Let's talk about Russian oil imports, because again, India had been resisting those calls to stop imports of Russian oil. Everyone in India seemed to want Modi to stand his ground. But then Trump went and announced that he was going to be sanctioning 2 Russian energy firms. He's effectively arm-twisting New Delhi to get the outcome he wants. Is that why we could eventually see that supply that has been coming in from Russia taper off?
Well, most probably in the by the end of this year, you will see a sort of, an end to almost all imports.
But then it's no
Russia.
longer a partnership of equals, is it?
Well, that depends on how you see things. The trade-off is completely different from what it was with the previous administration, even the Trump 1 administration, where there was a balancing off geostrategic and economic and trade components. Right now, we seem to have just trade elements, which are the core of the game. So what has been built for the past 30 years, that means building up India to be a counterweight to China for most of what Washington thinking is.
But that seems to be that the goal has shifted on that front, it seems.
It seems. I mean, it's not about propping up India, making it more resilient, more aligned to American interests. It seems as though they want to get profit out of it.
So where does the relationship go from here between India and the United States? Because from what we're hearing, Prime Minister Modi has skipped the ASEAN meeting. Will his next face-to-face with Donald Trump be remarkably awkward, given that Trump has taken credit for bringing the conflict between India and Pakistan, which we saw back in May, that he brokered that ceasefire, and New Delhi has tried to say, not really, that's not exactly how things played out.
Well, yes, there's a sort of good chemistry between the two. They were already
When it's good.
when it's good. When it's bad, it's maybe better not to meet because, as you said, it could be an awkward hobnobbing. So I think that they will wait for the right time to meet. Most probably sometime before the end of this year, and I think that they're waiting for this trade deal to be sealed before being able and to have a real deliverable and show, because both want to show that they are strong, they have a strong partnership.
I think India, from what we know, likes consistency, and it has gotten that consistency with Vladimir Putin, right? India also likes a multipolar world and keeping its eggs in many different baskets. But now that it's being forced to cut this energy supply it's gotten from Russia, where does it leave ties between Moscow and New Delhi? Because we have known over the past few years, India has tried to diversify its weapon supplies, for instance, from places like France and the UK and Israel.
Mm-hmm. Indeed. I think that in New Delhi, I mean, there was much enthusiasm in Washington about relationships, the relationship with India. But in India, there was always a bit of not a lukewarm, but a sort of tempered approach. And I think that that has proven the right approach. And I think that they will continue, and I think they've been consistent on that, continue to diversify their relationship with Moscow.
Can they have a relationship with Moscow if the energy supply dries up?
Well, they will most probably try to find a leeway to just continue on, because it represents more than a third of their crude imports. So, I mean, you just don't shift that so quickly. So I think that they will try to find a way, as they have since 2022. So for the past few years, they've done it. So I think that they'll find most probably another way to do it. And I think that will be part of the bargain on the trade deal.
Olivier Blahal, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you so much for joining us on the program today. Now, a hardline conservative has been elected to Japan's top job, Sanae Takaichi, shattering the political glass ceiling by becoming the country's first female prime minister. The 64-year-old is an admirer of Britain's Margaret Thatcher, and she's expected to lurch Japan further to the right on issues such as immigration and defense.
Her election as Japan's first female prime minister is a milestone in a country where men largely still hold sway. But Sanae Takaichi is steeling herself to become Japan's Iron Lady.
I will make Japan strong and prosperous.
In her first policy speech to Parliament, Takaichi said her priorities were to boost Japan's sluggish economy and its defense spending.
Our nation must take the initiative in radically strengthening its defense capabilities. To this end, we will act to bring forward the implementation of the 2% of the GDP level within the current financial year set out in the National Security Strategy.
A pledge that will please President Donald Trump, who will visit Japan in the coming days. Takaichi said she plans to take US ties to new heights.
The Japan-US alliance is the cornerstone of Japan's foreign and security policy.
64-year-old Takaichi is no promoter of gender equality or diversity. She opposes same-sex marriage and favours keeping succession to men only in Japan's imperial family. And despite an earlier pledge to have Nordic levels of women in her cabinet, on Tuesday, she named only 2 others from her traditionalist, male-dominated Liberal Democratic Party.
There was nothing to celebrate in terms of numbers and in terms of personal qualities. I would judge there to be little diversity in their politics.
The hardline conservative, who first entered politics in 1993 and Shinzo Abe's cabinet in 2006, Takaichi sees herself as the heir to Japan's deeply conservative former prime minister. She's embraced hawkish policies on China and vowed a stricter stance on foreigners in a country with historically low levels of immigration.
The world of professional sumo wrestling stepped outside of Japan and returned to London for the second time in its centuries-long history. Fighters clashed in the middle of London's Royal Albert Hall, and outside the ring, well, they won the hearts of Londoners and became overnight social media sensations. Charlotte Lamb reports.
When Japan's top sumo wrestlers rolled into London, it wasn't just the die-hard fans who took notice. More than 40 elite wrestlers known as Rikishi touched down for the Grand Sumo Tournament, a 5-day showcase of power, ritual and centuries-old tradition. The event was hosted in an unrecognisable Royal Albert Hall. Around 11 tons of clay was brought in to build the doyo, known as the sumo ring. Tickets to all 100 fights over the 5 days sold out. And behind the scenes, well, reinforced toilets, 400 bottles of soy sauce, and a noodle shortage that meant organisers had to call in emergency supplies. But it wasn't just the fights that grabbed attention. It was the wrestlers' adventures outside of the ring. For most, it was their first trip to England. Between training, sleeping and fighting, they hit the streets. Londoners and the internet loved every minute. They cruised on lime bikes through the city, caught a train to Hogwarts, and pulled pints at a classic British pub. At an average 160 kilos, the athletes were hard to miss.
I think people underestimate just how athletic the Rikishi are. I think people underestimate, they talk about the pure size of them, and it's almost a comic element to them. But the reality is their daily lives and their training and their the Shinto religion around it and the culture is just something you become obsessed with.
In the final showdown, Mongolian Yokozuna Hoshoryu Tomokatsu outmuscled fellow champion Onosato Daiki to win the Grand Sumo Tournament. Japan's national sport took London by storm and left behind a city full of new fans.
That's it for this edition of Access Asia. From all of us on the team, thank you very much for watching.